Thank you for taking the time to watch this recording. The information session is intended to outline the annual reporting requirements for payment service providers, or PSPs, and provide guidance to help prepare for submission. We'll start with the agenda for the session. We'll open with an overview of the annual reporting requirements in the Retail Payment Activities Act, or Act, and the Retail Payment Activities Regulations, or Regulations. We'll discuss who's expected to submit the annual report and how to prepare for submission and review the timelines. We'll also provide a walkthrough of PSP Connect, which will include how to access the annual report form and a high-level guided review of the annual report sections. And finally, we'll point to key resources and additional materials for further guidance. We'll start with the annual reporting requirements under the Act and Regulations. PSPs must submit an annual report to the Bank of Canada in accordance with the requirements set out in the Act and Regulations. To meet the obligation in Section 21 of the Act and Sections 18 and 19 of the Regulations, PSPs are required to complete and submit the annual report form that is available in the PSP Connect portal. The objective of annual reporting is to provide the bank with information about the PSP's retail payment activities and its compliance with obligations under the Act and Regulations. As the bank is gradually registering PSPs, this slide is intended to clarify who is required to submit the first annual report by March 31st, 2026. Let's start with registered PSPs. All PSPs who are registered by March 30th will need to submit their annual report. PSPs who are registered on or after March the 9th and before March the 30th will be given an automatic extension to the annual report deadline. These PSPs will have until April 28, 2026 to submit their annual report. If the PSP remains on the list of applicants on March 31st, 2026, they will not be required to submit the 2025 annual report. The bank may reach out to the PSP once they are registered to obtain additional information if required. Preparing for submission. The annual report asks specific questions related to the PSP's compliance with the Act and Regulations, including in the areas of operational risk and incident response, safeguarding of end-user funds, ubiquity and interconnectedness. This section refers to the number and values of EFTs, end-user funds held, number of end users, and the number of other PSPs that services are provided to, significant changes or new activities and incidents, record keeping, and financial metrics. The report is due by March 31st, 2026, and is to be submitted in the PSP Connect portal. The PSP is required to submit information about the previous calendar year, except for information about financial metrics, where the PSP is expected to submit financial metrics based on their financial year-end date. As a reminder, as set out in Section 61 of the Act, an individual or entity must not provide false or misleading information to the bank. This requirement applies to, among other things, information the PSP provides in the annual report form. The deadline for submission will remain as March 31st of every year. The details that follow pertain to the timelines for the 2025 reporting year. During the week of February 2nd, the annual report form will become available in PSP Connect. PSPs will be able to view and complete the form. Throughout the open window, PSPs will receive several reminders to submit the annual report between February 2nd to March 31st, 2026. The deadline to submit the annual report is March 31st, 2026. Failure to submit the annual report by this date may be considered a violation of the requirement under Section 21 of the Act. The annual report must be submitted through the PSP Connect portal. Therefore, the first step is to log back into your PSP Connect portal account. Note that the screenshots in this presentation may differ slightly from those in the actual annual report form. To log back into PSP Connect, click Sign In. Enter your email address and password and select Sign In. The system will then prompt a multi-factor authentication where you will be asked to enter the verification code from your Authenticator app. After entering the code, select Verify. Once you are logged into your account, navigate to the top menu bar and select Submit a Report. Within Submit a Report, select Annual Reporting. This next part will provide a high-level guided review of the sections of the annual reporting form. The first step is to confirm the reporting year by selecting Yes. Click Save and Continue. You will then be directed to an acknowledgement page. Please read it carefully. Confirm agreement by selecting the checkbox and click Save and Continue. Before being taken to the annual report, the Registration Information Change reporting page will be displayed. This gives PSPs an opportunity to make sure that their registration information is up to date. If the PSP needs to update registration information, click on the section title to make the necessary change. The status from each section will move from incomplete to complete as you move along the form. Once completed, click on the green Additional Information button to submit the updated registration information. If there are no changes required, click the red Abandon button. This button signals that you do not need to make changes to your registration information, and it will allow you to move along to completing the annual report. The main page of the annual report will then be displayed. Navigate to each section of the annual report by clicking on the section title. The sections do not need to be completed in a specific order. The progress bar at the top will give you an indication of your progress. The status of each section will move from incomplete to complete as you move along the form. Most questions are closed form. Depending on the response selected, some questions in the annual report form will prompt the PSP to complete an open text field. There are approximately 50 to 95 questions that a PSP will need to respond to in the annual report. The number of questions a PSP must respond to in the report depends on their circumstances, such as the retail payment activities that they perform. Generally, PSPs who hold funds will have more questions to respond to than PSPs who do not hold funds. Note that the questions in the Safeguarding End User Funds section contain skip logic, and questions that the PSP is required to answer are dependent on responses that were provided to preceding questions. All PSPs will be required to complete this section. However, if you note in your response that you do not hold end-user funds, you will not be provided with subsequent sections related to safeguarding of end-user funds. Once all sections are completed, click on Submit Annual Report Form. Following the submission of the annual report, PSPs may make amendments in PSP Connect until March 31st. Log into the PSP Connect portal and navigate to the annual reporting section. Next to the submitted annual report, click View Details. After updating the relevant sections, click Submit an Amendment. Please carefully read the acknowledgement page again and confirm agreement by selecting the checkbox. Click Save and Continue. You will again be brought to the Registration Information Change Report Details page. If you need to change the registration information on this page, you can do so in the same way described previously, by selecting the sections and choosing the Additional Information button. If you do not need to change the registration information, click on the red Abandon button to move forward in submitting your amendment. Navigate to the annual report sections to make the amendments by clicking on a section title. Sections that do not require an amendment can be left as not amended. The status from each section will move from not amended to amended as you move along the form. Once completed, click Submit Amended Annual Report Form. The new annual report status will be set to Submitted, and the previous form will be closed amended. Finally, this slide highlights some of the key resources for understanding your obligations under the Act. These include the Act, the regulations, and the bank supervisory guidelines, including operational risk and incident response, safeguarding end user funds, incident notification, notice of significant change or new activity. Additional materials include the annual reporting section on the bank's website, the annual report step-by-step guide, providing guidance and setting out all of the questions that the PSP will need to complete in the annual report, our at-a-glance supplemental information for operational risk and safeguarding end-user funds. The material provides a high-level overview of risk management obligations and a list of questions for each topic in each of the guidelines to help PSPs think about their compliance. For any further inquiries, visit the Bank of Canada website and the Contact Us page. Thank you for listening. We hope this recording supports your understanding of and compliance with the Bank of Canada's annual reporting requirements for registered payment service providers.